Welcome to Vigilant News, everybody. We have a special guest for our interview today, Nate Lewis from Operation Underground Railroad. Let me go ahead and read an intro for him. Nate is the VP of Development at Operation Underground Railroad. Operation Underground Railroad is a nonprofit organization that actively rescues and supports survivors of human trafficking, and child sex trafficking, to name a few. Operation Underground Railroad has assisted and supported thousands of survivors in 30 countries, working with law enforcement, governments, and aftercare organizations to bring healing to thousands of survivors. Since 2013, Operation Underground Railroad's efforts have led to the rescue of over 6,000 survivors and the arrest of 4,000 perpetrators worldwide. Nate, welcome to the show. How's it going?
Thank you very much, man. It's going well. Hey, disclaimer, just so somebody goes on our website, I've been promoted since that last thing was announced. So I'm now the Chief Development Officer. We do have a VP of Development. His name is Mike Rice. He's amazing. So if you go online and you see us and I don't look like the VP of Development, that's why. So but I just want to make that clear. But it's awesome. Thank you guys so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we had the pleasure of discovering you guys a few months ago, and I'd heard about you peripherally and just didn't realize how monolithic all the stuff you guys have been doing. When did Operation Underground Road get started exactly?
Yeah, so it's been almost 9 years now. Tim Ballard is our founder, former Homeland Security, and he just saw certain things happening and realized that he could do a lot more, a lot quicker by starting his own nonprofit. So, he took a leap of faith. The story is actually pretty incredible. We'll get into it today, but it's a pretty amazing story, a leap of faith, really. He left a pretty cush job, with a retirement plan and all that, and took some risk. In his first rescue, he rescued about 120 kids. So it was well worth it. And that was just kind of the launch that propelled the super amazing growth. We've had amazing support from some big names, and that's really helped us grow to where we are today.
Fantastic. Wow. Well, so when did you get involved with the organization?
So actually, strangely enough, 2 years ago today is when I was officially hired. I got involved quite a bit earlier through a good friend of mine. He actually played Tim Ballard in a movie called The Sound of Freedom, which is coming out hopefully soon. And he's like, man, I'm down here in Columbia. You got to come down here. I'm playing this guy. He's a real superhero, man. Like, truly, he's sending me these videos. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is insane. And my wife, starts following them and giving me updates. And I never thought I would be here. But it became this intertwined thing where I met with Tim, and I met a bunch of people in Salt Lake, and we did a bunch of I was formerly in the gun industry, and we did a bunch of shoot house training and all kinds of cool things. And the people is what really got me. The mission was first and foremost, but then when you go in and meet the people that are involved, like where their heart's at and why they're here for this cause and this mission, it was kind of a no-brainer. And then I was recruited by the current CEO, where I was happy what I was doing. And there's just, there's this pull on your heart where you just, we're truly, no doubt, at the end of my day, I will know I made an impact of some sort on the world and on human lives. And that's more rewarding than anything, really.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. This is an issue that I think Brian and I are really passionate about. It's something that you hear about in the news, but it's almost decontextualized. Like, what does human trafficking even mean exactly?
Yeah, there's the news angle, which is, really watered down. And then there's the opposite, where it's all kinds of crazy conspiracies. I'm sure the reality is somewhere in the middle.
Right. So,
yeah, well, and honestly, thank you guys for even having us on to talk about it, because the reality is unfortunately, we should be in the news. Some of the stuff I see in the mainstream media news, personally, I go, wow, if you guys would have talked about the 81 kids we just rescued in the Caribbean, and arrested 16 predators, like that might be some news to want to talk about, but nobody wants to talk about it. It's strange, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's perplexing. I mean, well, let's get right into it. First question is, what is human trafficking? I can just share from our audience. We tend to think of as, pedophiles online stalking kids. in malls, stuff like that. But it's a lot bigger than just pedophilia. What would you say?
Yeah, absolutely it is. Most people think of the movie Taken, where they're going to kidnap someone's daughter and hold them for ransom. Like that's really not how it works. There are several forms of human trafficking. The largest is slave labor, but there's forced marriage, there's sexual, trafficking, prostitution. We deal with human sacrifice. Unfortunately, it does happen. We deal with organ harvesting as well, and then there's online exploitation, to where they're forcing children to be abused on camera, and then they're selling that material online. So those are really the main angles as far as human trafficking, forcing someone. Now there's also in the labor piece, you're tricking somebody in, you're taking their passport and controlling their movements. So there's that piece of it as well. But those are the main real aspects. Basically slavery, right? It's modern day slavery. There's more people enslaved today than there has been in the history of our planet. So I think that's a little shocker to some people. And I could throw out some pretty scary statistics, that I think most people aren't aware of.
Yeah, what are some of the numbers? Because I mean, what are we talking about as far as human trafficking? Maybe people out there. What would you say?
Yeah, well, and I still owe you guys a couple of documents, one's from the UN and one's from the United States government, and I'll get you guys that information. And it's really difficult to really nail down human trafficking and the specific numbers, right? Because you don't really know. It's not like they're taking a census poll and giving that back to you and getting the accurate information. So it's really kind of an estimated guess, working with the UN and other great sources around the world. But right now it's estimated, it's well over 30 million people in slavery today. It's said that 9 million of those are sex slaves. And out of that 9 million, there's 2 million that are the average age of 14. And then in addition to that, sorry, audience, you tuned into a different episode, maybe not so different, but this is, I'm going to be real because that's all I can be. But, in every 30 seconds, there's a minor under the age of 18 who has been sexually abused. So that, if we're here for an hour, it has 120 minors in that time that have been abused. So it's the fastest growing criminal enterprise, $150 billion industry. And that number is hard to grasp. So here's a way to kind of grasp it. You could buy every NFL football team. You could buy not every NFL football team. You could buy an NFL football team, every single Starbucks franchise, and put every child through 4 years of college with that kind of money. Like, it's an insane amount of money every year, and the amount of money that's fighting it. There's tons of organizations. There are certain governments. Definitely, we don't get any government or state funding, but it's not even close to $150 billion a year fighting this war, so that's what we're up against. It's a big David versus Goliath type of a war,
Yeah. And so Operation Underground Railroad gets involved in the identification of these survivors and what to do with them once they've been rescued. So how does that happen exactly?
Yeah, so different ways, domestically and internationally, are the same but different. So we really provide training, software, hardware for forensics, to unlock phones, and then aid in the clean evidence for prosecution and certain things like that. And we do that internationally as well, but internationally it's a little different. So we do become informants. One, we go into these countries if we're asked, and then we offer them, a ton of resources, which they all usually say yes. How soon can we start? We teach them how to do online investigations, because a lot of the stuff, even before COVID, but since COVID, it kind of forced everything to go online. And so we're teaching them how to do these online investigations. And then, internationally, they can use us as informants. So because, being in a North African country or an Asian country, we look not like cops because we speak English. We're from America. They don't think we're cops. They will divulge a lot more information. So we'll go in undercover and we'll set up a case, and we'll basically hand them a case. Maybe it's in cooperation with our online team, but we'll basically that maybe we find them online and then we set it up in person, and we present them the case, and then they can either ask us to continue and with the setup and the sting, or we can just hand it off and they can take it from there. So there's a lot of different avenues. So that's kind of how we get there's prevention, intervention, and then there's the healing journey, which comes after that. And then that's where a lot of our work, and we're a nonprofit, so everything's public. You can go on our website, you can see where we spend our money. We spend a lot of money in our aftercare. We work with 150 different organizations around the world. We're in about 40 countries. And again, what we kind of do is provide resources or training. We want to bring their facilities up to the highest standard that we can get them to, and then have places for them to go to. And then that's, once we have those relationships and those in place, then it's easier for us to repatriate girls, boys back to their countries, because we have a vetted place where we can take them, right? And so that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the healing journey and the aftercare piece of what we do.
Wow. Well, one thing that disturbed me, and but was also something I kind of expected, is that it's not like every organization you interact with at the police level or government level when you're going overseas is even involved. Like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not like every country out there has a really amazing budgeted police department. They're actively fighting human trafficking, things like this. It's kind of mix and match where you go. Is that right?
Absolutely. It's all over the spectrums, right? Some actually believe it doesn't happen where they are. Some are involved in it, unfortunately. And then some don't know where to start, right? And so they want to, but they don't have the resources or even the know-how of where to start. Sometimes that's at immigration level, right? So at the border and the customs and agents and that, and just providing training there. And so, yeah, it is all over the spectrum, especially countries that, they rely on tourism, right? Like, one of their main economies is tourism. They don't even want it to get out that this might be happening. There's places that I'm sure you guys may have been, or definitely a lot of your audience has been to, these tourist destinations, nice beaches, nice hotels and stuff. And it's happening right in front of them and right below them, all around them, and I understand. And so we do our best to not disclose a lot of the locations, but you would be shocked. My family, we used to go to these same places. I've walked down streets, and then, here you are years later, and you're like, oh my gosh, but now I know what to look for. Now I know what to see. And now we're doing huge setups and busts and arrests and stuff. And you're going, wow, I never would have thought. But they don't want people to know, because then the tourists won't come, right? And so and we respect that completely. As long as they'll cooperate and we can work together, that's really the most important thing anyways. We actually don't want to take any credit. We give all the credit to them, and it actually helps our relationships with them, because they want to continue to work with us. This is their country. This is their territory. Like, however you guys want to deal with it. Now, we'll nudge. There's countries that need some nudging. They're complacent. They might even fall into, I don't know, just there's just different culture, right? And so we might have to like nudge a little bit, but it's, at the end of the day, it's up to them, really.
A great example is the movie Operation Toussaint. Is that basically how it goes most of the time?
Well, yes. And so that was very early on in what we did. And for those of you who haven't seen it, it's on Amazon Prime. It's on YouTube, Toussant. And that'll give you a really good idea of how Tim started it. One of his initial things that he did was to purchase these kids. He ended up adopting them. They're his kids now. And that is really how all this started. Now, look, from 2002, when Tim started in the Homeland Security, we've advanced insanely. Just in the phone technology has advanced, in 20 years. So we've also advanced our technology too, in technology in general, to fight this, whether it's drones or all kinds of technology that we're using. And so, yes, we still do those operations, and we do these things, we do these busts, but we also are seeing a really high return on getting online, because there's this weird wall when you're face to face with someone in a restaurant and having human interaction, and then when you're just looking at your phone, you actually will say more and do different things, probably even to your own relatives or friends or wife or husband, and so there's this disconnect that they have to this whole thing. And so we see a lot of it. And then honestly, they feel like they're safer. So they'll just straight up tell you, hey, we've got kids,
where you might end up going into a lot of these places, unfortunately, are disguised as massages or spas or whatever. Some are brothels straight up in your face, and so you have to go in there and kind of do investigations. You can't do entrapment. It's really difficult to really find out. They can lie about their age. They can do all this stuff, but we use open source intelligence on the internet, and we can find a lot of things. There's a lot of things that you and all of these viewers that you have can find out about people. Just the public has access to these, and then the technology that we can do. So like if I were to go to a bar and try to find an underage person, like you look at me, I'm not 14, right? But there's a software out there. I think I have a picture of me on my phone where you could take my picture and you can age regress this. And you can make me look like I'm 12 years old again. And so we can use all that to our advantage online on creating accounts and doing things. And then we can have, because a lot of these trackers, some of them, not a lot, I should say, are cautious, even though there's not a whole lot of risk, which is what we're trying to do is increase the risk. But, they'll be like, okay, well, if it's really you and you're really there, hold up 3 fingers. And so, you do the age regression thing, right? Oh, I'm holding up 3 fingers. Okay, well, then now hold up 1. Okay, hold up 1. And they're like, dang, he really is a 12-year-old boy. Okay. And so the technology is so far advanced compared to, 20 years ago. It's the same, but it's different. And we're also adapting, right? As things change and you see things, you have to change as well. And so we definitely do still do that. But we also found really clever ways to use amazing technology. Most of it's available to the public to do stuff, and track people. And so you would be blown away what people will say and do online to a perfect stranger that they have no idea. It's fascinating, actually.
Yeah, it is quite fascinating. I mean, well, here in the United States, we tend to think that, we're like the city on a hill, that these things don't touch us, that our law enforcement has it so airtight that nothing like this could possibly happen in the United States. But that's not necessarily true. Is that right?
Oh, it's far from true. It's happening literally everywhere in the United States.
Probably every major city in the United States, would you say?
Absolutely. It doesn't have to be a major city. It could be a small city. It could be a small town, small population. It's happening. Here's why it can happen anywhere, right? So I can create an account on social media. Just pick one. I can create, it's fake, right? I can create pictures. I can do all kinds of things. And then even as, let's say a 45-year-old man is much smarter than a 12-year-old girl, I would say, right? I think we could all agree with that. Yep. But they also know how to manipulate. And they actually find girls who are posting about like, I hate boys, I'm never gonna date again, or they're talking about like, oh, the parents are going for divorce. They're vulnerable, right? And they prey on that, and they go right after them, and they think they're a 14-year-old boy that's really cute, that's giving them all this attention, which is what they want in this vulnerable time of their life, and then they start tricking them into certain things. And the first one is like, oh, where do you guys vacation as a family, or like, do you like to swim? Oh, do you have pictures of you in your bikini by the pool? And then 12-year-old girl is innocent. Oh, I hang out in public in my bikini. Why wouldn't I send a picture of me in my bikini, right? Well, that guy's taking those pictures and putting them on a hard drive, and then he's selling those 12-year-old girl pictures on a dark web, right? And that's where it starts. Wow. Then it just goes and spirals from there. So these guys can do that from anywhere. They don't have to be in a major city. They could be in a population 1,800 town, in their basement of their house or their parents' house or wherever they are, and preying on these young kids.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't seem like something that happens, because you don't see it really until you encounter information like this and you realize, wow, this is actually way more prevalent. I think I remember statistics, something like over 700,000 kids go missing every year in the United States. Yeah. So, and that's just the ones that get reported. So it's pretty big. So, what happens? Like, so you find out that there's a guy who's, maybe trafficking some kids or adults or whatnot. As soon as you hear about this, you just rush in, you take the guy down, you rescue the people, right? There's no delays, or is there something else going on?
Well, there can be multiple reasons for delays. So it's I always try. So many people are familiar with the drug cartels and the drug dealers, right? So I always tend to go that direction because everybody's like, oh, I've seen the movie Blow and I've seen this, blah, blah. So there's one thing, you could go in and you could go after the trafficker, right? But somebody's supplying that guy. There's a supplier. So there's this weird dichotomy of like, what do I do? Do we go in and arrest this guy who's trafficking 3 kids? Or do we find his boss who's supplying 12 people kids, right? And how far can we get in that network? We're working a case right now, and a lot of the stuff I can't actually share a whole lot of information on, but there's a case that we are been part of, and it's an organ harvesting ring. And it literally is, I don't know how much I can tell you, but picture like not a small warehouse of teenage girls that are specifically being impregnated to produce babies, to produce organs for harvesting. So imagine this, right? You could just get in and rescue 6 kids, which we have, and one was a 2-year-old whose heart was going to be sold for $250,000 on the black market, because there's really wealthy people out there in the world who, you know, if you need an 80-year-old heart, you can get that probably in like 15 minutes. Okay, you know, it's a regular size of an adult size home. But if you need a little baby heart, it's that big, to fit inside a little 2-year-old that's you know, on life support or whatever, like, there's people who will pay whatever it takes. They don't know where it came from, right? So there is this. But so my whole point in this is that, do you just go in and try to rescue the 6 kids, or do you try to infiltrate that and take months and take down the whole entire network of that, right? And so there are really thought out, strategized timing on certain things, right? You know, you get to a point where, hey, we need to move fast. Like, this has to happen now because they're starting to get nervous or whatever it is, or somebody's getting tipped off, or they're starting to ask different questions now. And like, okay, let's move, you know? It's a weird process, honestly. Look, there's a million different literal stories out there, right? So some you do go in. You go in and you just act like immediately. And that's why people always ask, like, well, why are you a nonprofit? Why are you going to be doing this? Why are you going to come to our country? And why is the government not doing this? And the reality is the truth. And the truth is that if we found a lead, and I worked for the United States government, and this, nothing against anything, I'm not talking bad, I'm just telling you how it works, is that in order for me to go in and take that information and go through the process and all that, it's like, we use the analogy as you're trying to turn an aircraft carrier, right? Like, okay, yeah, we can turn around. Whereas like where we're at, like, and especially we have an amazing, fierce leader, Tim Ballard. Like, he will knock down doors people won't knock down. He'll go through them. He'll go places that no one will go. He'll go places that people tell him not to go, because he literally looks at them like they're his children, right? And so there's nothing that he won't do for those children. So he's gonna be there a week later. You know, he's gonna, as soon as he gets those intels, if it's not him personally or somebody on our team, we immediately have our online team doing as much research as they can. And it's amazing what you can find out about people's locations and then their networks of people. And then you can just become one of them and then fit into their, we know how they think and how they talk and work. So you just become one and they let you into their circle and blah, blah. And the next thing you know, like a week later, they think that they're getting, you know, it's greed. A lot of this is greed. So they think they're getting this business opportunity. We had a guy, he's like, oh, I went and got my hair cut and dyed and got new clothes. He's coming to a business meeting. He's super excited. You know, he's gonna grow his business. And he's, you know, this is like a business meeting, right? He gets set up, and a week later, guess what? He's being cuffed and stuffed. And he's in a, can't say the country, prison right now, where you don't want to be. Right. I'm telling you right now, you don't want to be. Even if you are in that prison for a short amount of time and you run in and you molest children, the cartel will take you out.
Right.
That's how the cartel think. They're very close with family and certain things. Even though they're criminals, there's a belief that you do not abuse children. I don't care. Like, you just don't abuse children. So that's what I'm saying. Like, a week later, this guy's handcuffed. He'd been on the run for 2 years. 2 years. This guy he fled his country. He posted bail. He'd already been arrested for all this stuff. And then he flees. Nobody could find him. Well, we had a tip from a Dutch police agency. We were actually in the Ukraine doing some work there. And sure enough, Tim gets on there and starts texting him. And boy, all of a sudden it's on. And Tim was like, moving our team fast. You know, like there's a fine line between moving fast and moving effective. Like, you don't want to move too fast to where you're not the most effective, especially when you're dealing with evidence and prosecution, and possibly, you know, you don't want to make any mistakes where this guy can go free, right? So there's a lot of checks and balances. Like if we could arrest them the next day, that would have been amazing.
Right.
But there's still some judicial process that you have to go through to build a case and have the prosecution that's going to hold up in court. So this guy not only gets arrested for committing crimes in that current country that he's in, but if he ever serves out his sentence, then he goes back and faces crimes in his country, right?
Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Forgive me for just rambling and talking so much. You guys know I can do that. So just cut me off whenever you need me to.
Well, you mentioned that you were in Ukraine recently, and we've been covering some of the stuff that the media isn't reporting on going on over there. We've heard from other people that Ukraine is actually a pretty big hub for human trafficking. Is that true?
It's very true. So what happens is, and we learned this on Operation Toussaint, you can see a little bit of this, but when there's a natural disaster, right, there's chaos. There's all kinds of things going on. And the true story is that in Haiti, when the earthquake hit, thousands of children lost their parents, right? And they're crying over them. Well, they literally call it harvest time. So they'll take paint and write on their door, orphanage. And so a guy like you and I, we can't take in any kids, this and that. Everything's devastating. You're just trying to go, oh, there's an orphanage. I'm going to take these kids to this orphanage. It ain't no orphanage. Let me just tell you. Right. So these type of things breed trafficking. So the cool thing is that Tim, there's such a cool thing. So we have a documentary called The Hidden War that might be coming out soon. I might be able to give you a little bit of a teaser on that, and maybe I can share with you guys a little teaser video. But the reality is so the Haiti project, and for those people who may be out there that have followed us for a long time, there's a boy named Gardy, which really started this whole thing. It's an amazing story. It's in the Operation Toussaint thing. Amazing, amazing thing. We're still searching for him. Literally, currently, at this moment, we're still searching for him. It's been 8 years. So we go into the Ukraine, and Tim's got this all on video, dude. So now, because, and this is another topic, people are going to come at you when you do all kinds of good work. And I think that, I think people are going to realize, like, anybody who's being attacked, I'm going to follow those guys because there's probably a reason, right? So anyways, now we just are always documenting everything we do so people can't say we lie and make up all this stuff, blah, blah. So we have a team there, and this is all filmed. So we go in when this first thing started, and there's so many cool details to it, and I won't give it all away, but we ended up working with different organizations and pulling out a bunch of people. And there was bombings going on while we're there. We bought some ambulances, we bought vans, we had buses, and the first child, this is no joke, it's all video. And people will tell us this isn't true, but it's all on video. So we have it. The first boy, that we fill the bus, and Tim has asked this boy, what's your name? And it's all being translated. And the boy says, Gardy. What? And so he's like, can you tell me, is that a common name in Ukraine? Everyone's like, nope, never heard of it. So we knew from Haiti, and the Gardy story, like, dang, we wish we could have been there. And that's when the war started. We was like, we need to be there. Like, we need to go now, and we need to help, right? And so we've continued support there. And then we ended up recruiting and training these Ukrainian girls, because we started getting intel from around the world. They're like, hey, we've got Ukrainian girls. We've got Ukrainian girls, especially in countries and regions where they're not blonde hair, blue-eyed girls. They're dark skin, dark hair, dark eyes. This is a rarity, right? Like, and some of their clientele want to come there and see a white girl. So they're starting to get all this intel. Well, oh my gosh, it just starts this spider web, like across countries, across the globe. And it's like crazy. And that's why it's called the Hidden War, because most people have no idea. It started there, and then there's like this underbelly spider web that just spans out, right? Because they know, like, oh, let me help you. And the parents will give their kids away because they think they're going to someplace better, right? And so they're tricking them like, okay, yeah. I mean, we see the craziest stuff. People who claim to have a nonprofit, and they'll go in and be like, hey, we're bringing you guys clothes and food and water. Oh, my gosh. And they're like, hey, are these your kids? Yeah, like, oh, let us give them a better life. We can put them in school. We can do this. They go with them. Done. Trapped. Now they're in some spa, and they're being forced to do things that they never thought they would. They didn't even know. They get them in there, and they start training them on how to perform these acts because they didn't even know, right? So it's insane. So to answer your question, yes, absolutely. Any kind of natural disaster or chaos or complete breakdown, everything broke down during that time. And so, yeah, it was, again, the word that they use is harvest time. It's harvest time.
Wow.
They just go after it.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing that's really interesting about the kind of grander perspective behind this is because when you have that chaos, that society breaks down, law and order breaks down, and people who are really the only thing that's inhibiting them from doing something nasty is society and law and order. All of a sudden it's like a free for all, and that just creates like a cascading cycle. So I mean, this leads me to like the other thing I think that's really awesome about what you guys do is that it's a full spectrum, level of support. You're not just going in and arresting, like we've talked about earlier, quickly grabbing that one guy, but then you don't get anyone in the network. So that's the perpetrator level. But then you have the survivor level. Like, you can't just go in and rescue somebody without having those next steps in place because people end up just falling back into the same circumstance. Is that right?
It is right. And it's strange that people would even consider it a rescue if those individuals are right back where they were rescued from.
Right.
In our books, that doesn't exist. If they end up right back where they were, that's not a rescue, right? I could go down off the street and put somebody in a hotel for a night and say I rescued a girl. Does that mean they're rescued? No, tomorrow night they're going to check out and they're going to be right back where they were. Absolutely not. We have a commitment that's lifelong. And they're not even lifelong to the people that we rescue. Any organization we go in and we find in these vetted aftercare facilities, and we've seen this, and we call it the butterfly effect. You bring one child in, and that child now introduces you to these other children, and then you see like what that is, and now all of a sudden you're giving them a new smile or prosthetic legs or whatever it may be. Like there's all these different things that could come from that one child that we've taken to there. And honestly, we will not. And you can see this all over our social media, our YouTube. Everything that we always say is like, we won't do a rescue or a sting operation until our aftercare signs off on it, saying, okay, we're ready. And that's also what may take us a little bit longer because we're constantly trying to find. That's why we have 150 different organizations that we work with in aftercare in 40 countries, and we do ops in about 30. They're going to different countries, but we need to have that network. We need to have that landing zone so that right on the heels of the bust, the aftercare is there, number one, because the girls think they're being arrested and taken to prison, in jail, right? So we need to instantly change their mindset of what is going on. That they're not being abused anymore. There's no more bad guys. Whatever grooming took place is over, and now it's time to refocus their mindset and begin their healing journey. And again, it's lifelong. So one, we don't require it. You can't force anybody to do anything, but we definitely continue to follow up and see if they need support and how that is. And we're committed lifelong, even for their children. We're now seeing survivors who, we've been doing this long enough, who are having their own children. So we can help that survivor's children, right? And so there's amazing stories about this and these survivors becoming advocates. We work with a group in Nepal and a nonprofit there that it's all run by survivors. Like they're like, oh, you know what? We're advocates for this now. We're going to change the way it is. And I probably shouldn't have said the country, but I did. But they're doing amazing things, right? And we're going to continue to support them. And that's really the hidden thing, like, yeah, the ops are cool and the undercover investigations and all that stuff. And it is. And there's a really, I think when you talk about aftercare, you can't not talk about operations because every person we put away behind bars, it's an average 117 victims that they will abuse in their lifetime. So we are being preventative to help slow down the aftercare that's required. But the reality is aftercare isn't a day long or a month long or a year long, right? It can take many years. And the real success, and there's a lot of organizations that have, more success than others, but they have to have opportunity. They have to have a way or a skill set beyond just like some thing to be successful and to be an entrepreneur or to have some sort of skill trade or vocational training, some way that they can leave and know that they're going to be okay no matter what. Like whether they want to do hair or do fingernails or want to be a veterinarian, whatever their dream is, we'll do our best to do that. Some of them want to just have their own little cafe or a meal truck or a coffee store or whatever it is, like whatever it is. We've had girls that want to just be farmers. They just want to grow crops, and then they sell it at the market and they take that money, so brilliant, right? They take that money, like this is a true story. This girl's growing potatoes, and there's 2 growing seasons in this area. And she'd take that money, those potatoes, you buy money, and she's like so excited. Oh, now I'm going to do ginger because I can get higher yield, I can make more money. And now, you know what she's doing? She's growing the ladder, right, of success. Nice. And if you don't have those opportunities, and I think that's what's important, and I always tell people when they give through O.U.R. to the survivors, not to, through O.U.R., all they're giving isn't dollars, it's opportunity, it's hope, it's future, it's a life beyond abuse, right? And rehabilitation and that healing. They may struggle the rest of their life to a certain degree, right? You never know when they're going to have a breakdown or a relapse, and this is severe trauma that you're dealing with. So there could be hundreds of thousands of dollars in therapy, just in one region of the world. There's a lot. There's a lot that we do, and that's a whole nother hour episode that we can talk about when it comes to aftercare and what we do there.
Yeah, I think the aftercare component really highlighted something that I had suspected, but when you explained it when we were speaking off camera the other day, it really emphasized that this is a holistic problem that requires a holistic solution. You got 2 avenues, it seems like. You got a perpetrator who's going to kidnap a girl, God forbid. She's going to be put in a crazy situation for months or years. That's not just going to go away because you plucked her out of that and you put her in some new life. I mean, that trauma, that disturbance in her psychology is still going to be there. And she needs to learn how to live again and live successfully again, not just survive. And then you have the other situation where somebody, through desperation, they decided to, sell their body. I mean, right now we're living in a situation where, I forget the percentage, but some percentage of college-age girls in the United States are actively selling their own bodies online to pay for college tuition. So we're only like a hop and a skip away from even more seedier things happening. So once that connection's been made, once you realize that you can sell your body and make the money you need to survive or even, feed your kids, it's not going to be something you can just give up magically because you took that person out of that situation. There's a whole rehabilitation, a healing, as you say. And, that it just shows you how big this problem really is.
To that point, when we were talking, you mentioned, there's healing the psychological trauma of that is one thing, but you guys help them acclimate or get introduced into society in a positive way and teach entrepreneurship?
Yeah, absolutely. And how to be successful. But all the components, part of being a successful human, no matter what you do, is one, having the confidence, right? And having the mindset and the mental strength to tell yourself that you are better than just that you're not. Because for so long, they've been told, well, this is all you're ever going to be. This is how all you're ever going to make your money. This is all there is. In addition, and every story is different. So I'm not trying to generalize this is how it is with everyone. They're all different. But you have to also realize, let me try to put this into a little bit of perspective. The human brain thousands of years ago, or whoever argument you want to come up with on when it was developed and created, was created not to be successful, but to survive, right? Like conserve energy, take the path of least resistance. So in a lot of these countries, it's their easiest way to success and to get money and to get an iPhone and whatever it may be, because they don't have to even have a degree or they don't even have to know how to read or write, right? They don't have to do anything. So it's like, and I've watched it with my own eyes, and I have so much respect and inspiration from those who are actually out there doing real work and making a fraction of what the girls are doing on the street, because they're making a choice saying, I know I could make more money doing this, probably in the most part, but I'm not gonna do that to myself. I'm gonna stay this course, and who knows where that leads, right? Like who knows, right? And so that's the thing, is a lot of these places don't have the opportunity. I think, Ryan, you mentioned that, is like there's no opportunity for them. So imagine, Justin, you're talking about girls in the United States who are in college, first of all, to pay for college, like talk about having an opportunity in life, and they're doing it. So imagine if you're not even in the United States and you're not even attending college like you have. It's hard to even conceptualize, but of course girls are going to go to sound their body. They don't have anything else. Right? And they believe that. You got to change that in their mind too, that they are worth something. There is more to them. They can offer the world something. Don't lose hope. Keep them strong mentally. Your brain is so powerful, and that's another conversation that we can get into. But I think that we're having the mental strength and all these other pieces in that is really what you have to start with, is rebuilding the brain and their belief system, because it's almost like a 2-year-old has to learn how to walk and talk and read and all that stuff. You're introducing a whole new concept to them, right? That there is something more out there, and their belief system has to be changed, because these traffickers, they make them feel like this is all they got, that they're worth nothing. And so you got to change that story to them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It highlights just how important, having healthy communities are. It's a drum I beat constantly. It seems like every time we have a deep conversation, I'm thrown in the community bit somewhere. So, it's really important. So just to let the audience know, this is just a brief introduction to a massive topic. There's so much we want. We could sit here for like 9 hours easily and just talk all day long about all this stuff. I'm so passionate about it. So as we start to wind down here, I wanted to do 2 things. I wanted to highlight maybe one of your bigger success stories. It doesn't have to be recently, but in general about something. And then we'll talk about how people can get involved in this in some capacity. So what are some of the big success you've had somewhat recently?
So it's hard to pick one. Recently, because you said recently, we've had not only do we train AirAsia, which is one of the largest airlines in the world, in Asia for sure, on knowing the signs and seeing with trafficking, because it does happen in airports and in airplanes. But we've wrote a really big, kind of like an SOP for countries on where do you start, because they don't even know where to start. And so this is kind of what is going to go into law. A lot of countries don't even have laws against trafficking because they don't even, it doesn't really exist, right? They didn't have to. At some point, they had to put in drugs are illegal. Let's write laws. Same kind of concept, So I would say that we call that a mega project because it's been a couple of years in the making and getting the best in the world to help write this SOP, because a lot of countries like, oh my gosh, where do we start? And so we just recently were able to finalize that, and we're taking it to many countries in Southeast Asia first and helping them, one, write laws. Where does law enforcement start? Where do they start their training? All the aspects of whether it's technology, manpower, not just the investigations, but all the way to the aftercare and the prosecution of this, because most people don't know how to prosecute. So it's this big, huge, I think it's a 180-page document of really an SOP for implementing anti-human trafficking efforts in your country. So I would say that one's a pretty big one. There's a lot to choose from, but that was one we were just talking about this morning, and so it's fresh in my mind.
Sure. Yeah, that's excellent. That's definitely paving the way for a lot of good work in the future. So, okay. So, how do you get involved? Obviously, there's a million and one ways. So we're just going to touch on this briefly. You guys are a nonprofit, so funding is obviously a really good way for people to do something. You can do it pretty quick and easy. As far as, individual contribution, you make a donation, you're good. So you guys have a strategic alliance with an organization called United to One. And they're going to be launching something somewhat soon here where using an app, you can basically make monthly donations or round up your purchases to donations. And so that's one way, financial, I'd imagine that you guys probably helped the most in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think they're partnered with OG Pay. And I think that's the system that they're using to process those transactions. And so, for us as an organization, because we don't receive any state or federal funding, there's a lot of regulations that come with it. And so we just decided we just want to stay in the private sector. So there's lots of ways that people can get involved. You just mentioned one, check out United to One. But also, talk to your employer about employee matching. Go on and sign up for Amazon Smile. You can do it on your app. It used to be where you just had to place the orders online. You can switch it on your app now to do Amazon Smile, where a percentage will go to us. You can do Facebook fundraising, whether it's for a birthday or Giving Tuesdays in December or November 29th, actually. And there's ways like that as far as donations. I think that you can go. We have what we call an ABS club, an abolitionist club, where it's reoccurring donors, and it could be $5 a month. That's important to us because when we're budgeting, we want to know that we have this much money that we're going to see, so that we can see how we're going to expand, and it can help us with our vision. And the Abs Club members get exclusive content, discounts on our store, to our clothing. Our clothing is going to hopefully one day soon cover 100% of our admin costs, so that every dollar donated will go to the mission. So you'll get discount on clothing. There's a Facebook group for the Abolitionist Club. There's, they get VIP lines and tickets and perks at events and certain things. And so it's kind of like our, rewards program, so to speak, is, because they are really important to us. Those that donate every single month, it helps us with our budgeting. But yeah, talk about it. I would say, we have a screening coming out in the United States November 3rd. It's happening right here is the name of the documentary. It'll be about 1,000 theaters around the nation. Have screenings at home, share some of the videos like Operation Toussaint, where I mentioned. Go watch that and just be the voice. And I'll kind of end with this, and this is Tim. We're called Operation Underground Railroad for a reason, and anybody who's into history knows a little bit about what Operation Underground Railroad, or not Operation, but the Underground Railroad was, right? And then you think about slavery was legal, right? Back in the day, it was legal. It was like buying, groceries. And how did it end? So we need to look to history to find out what we can do currently. Well, there's lots of ways that it all came about, but there was a couple of very successful books, like Uncle Tom's Cabin, and a couple of authors, but they ended up getting around together in a little group, not physically underground, but sometimes in a house or whatever. And they talked about it, and then they got loud about it, right? Like we're doing right here with your group. You're just in Uncle Tom's cabin, so to speak, right? And then these people kept spreading the word until when people finally said, "What? This is happening? This has got to end." And then the Civil War became more about ending slavery, right? And Abraham Lincoln met Harriet Beecher Stowe and said, "So you're the woman who wrote the book that started this war," which was kind of true, but kind of not, we've seen it in other parts of history between the European African slave trade with William Wilberforce, who, fought for years to try to get things passed and to stop this. And then, it wasn't until he literally got the most influential, powerful people on a boat and tricked them and slammed into a slave ship and showed them and let them smell it for themselves and see it, when they went, "Oh my gosh, what? This is what you're doing to human beings?" And this has got to stop. And that's what we need. We need all of you guys to say, "You know what? Enough is freaking enough." Why are we not talking about children who are being abused? Right. It's absolutely absurd. It should be across everything you ever see all the time, because it's $150 billion a year industry happening in every country and probably every city. Why are we not talking about it? And so for me, how I would say to get involved is, please talk about it. I know it's hard. I know it's difficult, but I promise you, the more you talk about it, the easier it becomes. And it may not, you got to know your audience. It may not be at dinner that you're talking about it with your parents or whatever, but you got to start talking about it. And you got to start talking to your employers about it. You got to start just talking about the reality that it's the fastest growing criminal enterprise on the planet. Because if I buy a kilo of cocaine and sell it, I'm out of cocaine. I got to go reinvest into cocaine. And when I buy a child one time, and then I get 24/7 profit and never reinvest into that. So these criminals know that. Why would I mess around with drugs? It's stupid, because now I got to take risks every time I'm looking for a new. No, I buy it once and I'm done. So they're catching on to this too. And if we as a society don't catch up to where they're at, we're in trouble. And it's our future. It's our children. Come on, guys, enough is enough. We've got to demand it. We've got to demand it from our media. We've got to demand it from our governments. We've got to demand it from everyone across the board. Stop. When are we going to start talking about children being raped? When? We're okay. The drug trade, and thank you for the soapbox, but the drug trade, I don't know what we're doing there anymore. But I think we've tried whatever we're doing, but there is things that are happening currently right now that we're not even talking about. And it drives me crazy. So if anything, yes, please help us, because we're enabling all law enforcement in 50 states. We're helping different governments where our money does go a lot further in these countries, but we're actually doing something about it. So your dollar will actually do something on it. But if you don't have the funding, speak up. And that's what our education is. We're putting it in schools. Speak up. We've got to stop. We've got to start talking about this. We have to. Can't sweep it under the rug anymore.
Yeah, I'm into that. Well, Nate, I really appreciate your passion. You guys are doing fantastic work. This is just the beginning of our collaboration together. So really appreciate the time and energy you took to share with us today. And I'm assuming you can go to, what's the website again for people to find out more?
O.U.R, so Operation Underground Railroad, O.U.R rescue.org, O-R-G.
All right, excellent. Well, we'll have all the links in the chat here. We had a spectator show up here a few seconds ago. So sorry about the background noise.
Everybody loves puppies. Come on, it's perfect.
Yeah. So hey, listen. Thanks so much for coming on, Nate. Really appreciate it, and we'll catch you on the next one. Okay.
Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.